They didn't knock. They came like a storm front, bucket teeth flashing, hazard lights strobing orange over my boxes. The excavator roared past my barely parked U-Haul and swung its arms straight at my dock. Boards screamed. My old red kayak rolled, scraped, and slipped into the lake with a hollow slap. A woman in a white blazer, hair sprayed into a battle helmet, smile sharp as a clip-on, filmed me with her phone. Unpermitted structure removed under Homeowner Association shoreline standards, she announced, loud and clean, like a commercial. I stood there with a coil of rope in my hands and a heart suddenly unplugged. "Stop," I said. My voice sounded smaller than the engine. "Sir, step back." Another man, orange vest, clipboard, didn't look at me, just at the bulldozer track chewing my gravel. The bucket tore through the last plank. My dock broke with a sound like a bone. You ever feel a piece of your life taken without permission? Like someone reached into your chest and rearranged the furniture? That's what it felt like. Drop a comment if you've been there, because I swear I tasted metal. 3 minutes after they finished, karma tripped on its own shoelace. The excavator's chain slipped, the bucket lurched, and a steel jaw slid off, dunking nose first into the water. It snagged a neighbor's floating gas line. A thin, hissing whisper turned into a chorus of, "Shut it off! Shut it off!" The guys scrambled. The woman in white, Karen I'd learned, dropped her phone and grabbed at nothing. Then she looked at me like I was suddenly oxygen. "Sir, Mike, right? Please, can you help now?" Funny thing is, some habits don't rust. "Everyone back," I said, already moving. Boots in the water, rope in teeth, I went cold to the waist and cut the strap right before the bucket could dogleg the gas line under. "Don't touch that valve," I told the worker, who wouldn't meet my eyes. We got the bucket settled on a makeshift cradle of dock wreckage. The hiss died. Lake smell, mud, and old leaves filled my nose. My fingers shook from adrenaline, not cold. Karen smoothed her blazer, turned on that neighborly smile. "We appreciate your cooperation. We can revisit any fines," she said, camera back up like nothing had happened. The word revisit floated like a dead fish. Let me rewind for a second. I'm Mike, 56, retired fire rescue, water unit. I've pulled screaming kids and tired drunks off this kind of shoreline more times than I like to count. 3 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. She dreamed of mornings on a dock with coffee, dragonflies skittering like silver stitches on the water. This little house by the lake was me keeping a promise, to her, to quiet, to being done with sirens. I'm not good at yelling anymore. I thought I'd trade it all for a porch and a kayak. You see how that went. A pickup door creaked behind me. "You good, man?" A younger guy, early 30s, close-cropped hair, a limp like an old friend. He'd helped me carry in a box of pots half an hour earlier. "Name's Logan," he said, voice steady, eyes flicking between me and the wreckage. "Congrats on the welcome party. Homeowner Association runs tight out here. Tighter than a base bunk inspection. Karen likes it when folks are scared." I stared at my dock, now a broken jaw on the shoreline. "Looks like fear's policy." "Yeah," he said, jaw working, like there was more he wanted to say. "Watch your back." Here's what happened next. By evening, they turned my welcome into a ceremony. Folding tables popped up on the shared lawn near the shore. Punch, cookies, a sign that said, "Community meet and greet" in cheerful blue. Under the fairy lights, Karen clicked through poster prints on an easel. Visual standards, historic shoreline adjustments, safety first community. On the final poster, my dock, circled in red like a crime scene photo. "We do want to keep everyone safe," she said, voice sugared. "Sometimes new neighbors don't realize the rules." I felt the crowd glance at me and then away. A man snorted quietly like I'd stepped in something. My stomach dropped. "You've felt that too, haven't you? When a room decides who you are before you've opened your mouth." "I didn't build that dock," I said, calm even. "It came with the house." Karen tilted her head, faux sympathy. "Unpermitted is unpermitted, Mike." A worker I recognized from earlier, dark hair, sleeved forearms, hovered near the back. He kept wiping his palms on his pants. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Karen slapped the next poster onto the stand, a schematic of the shore with neat white lines like a dental chart. Then a voice beside me, a whisper from a man so thin his shirt hung off him like it belonged to someone else. "Your dock's on the city's old map," he said without moving his lips. 89. They took that layer off the display. I turned. He had a deep zipper scar down his chest, a tremor in his fingers that matched the tremor in his voice. Name's Sam, he murmured. I don't want trouble. Remember, I keep copies. In my shed. I looked at Karen, beaming at the group. I looked at Sam's shaking hands. I looked at Logan, not looking at me at all. Somewhere in my ribs, something cracked. Not a bone. Pride, maybe. Mike, Karen sang, for safety's sake, we do ask that you avoid entering the water until we can ensure there are no further hazards from your modifications. From your wreck, I said, too soft for them to hear. By the time the fairy lights dimmed, the home-baked cookies tasted like chalk. I went home to a house that still smelled like other people's dust and furniture polish. In the half-unpacked living room, a box marked kitchen sat next to a box marked her things. My hands hovered over the second box and didn't open it. I sat down instead. The silence had weight. Sirens used to fill that space. Tonight, it was filled by my own breath and the tick of a wall clock that didn't belong to me. You ever feel like the quiet is judging you? Like it's saying, you called yourself done with chaos, but look at you, stuck in the middle of another one. I don't kid myself. I'm not 25 with something to prove. I am 56 with plenty to lose. But I know water. I know panic. And I know that crowds believe what they can see with their eyes, even if their eyes are being led by a pointer and a smile. I went into the shed, found an old duffel of mine, rope, duct tape, a handful of small buoy markers I'd picked up at a yard sale. I took a black marker and wrote on a sheet of printer paper, emergency drill, shoreline evacuation, volunteer instructor. Then I taped my name at the bottom, small letters, no heroics. I slid the page into a plastic sleeve. At dawn, the lake was a plate of steel. I waded ankle deep, set 3 homemade markers in a crooked crescent just off the break, far enough to catch the wind's push, close enough for a curious neighbor to squint. On the porch rail, I clipped my emergency drill notice and a handbell I found in a drawer. It wasn't official. It wasn't anything, really. It was bait. Morning, Logan said from the sidewalk, coffee in one hand, maybe a conscience in the other. I'm running a training, I told him. For who? For anyone who cares not to drown when your committee's plans meet actual weather. He looked over his shoulder. Karen's gonna call that a stunt. Then let her come call it. Logan's jaw worked again. Then he blew out a breath and took out his phone. You want an audience? I'll get you one. I'll say the Homeowner Association asked for it. She likes her name on things. Careful, I said. Lines you cross, you can't uncross. He shrugged without answering. You really think this helps? No, I said. I think it reveals. Here's what I didn't tell him. I had a little trick from my old days. Not a hazard, not a crime, just a visual. I mixed a harmless dye, non-toxic stuff we used to test water flow for hydrants, into a jar. I tied the jar to a low post where the lake nibbled at the grass. When the wind curled from the west, the dye would bloom like a bruise and move along the shoreline, where any idiot could see exactly how water ignores lines on a poster. By 9, half the cul-de-sac had drifted down, just to see what he's doing now. Mower engines paused, coffee mugs cooled, kids hung back, sensing there was adult tension to taste. Karen arrived with a small crew in branded polos and tight smiles. She wore sunglasses today, mirrored lenses that turned my face into a shapeless reflection. Good morning, she said, sugary. I do hope you're not creating panic. I'm creating a demonstration, I said, of how water moves, of where your updated shoreline map is going to be a problem. Updated maps are approved by committee and consultants, she said, already positioning herself so the crowd could see her profile. Not by improvisations. I rang the handbell once. Heads turned. Anyone who ever wanted to know what you're supposed to do when fuel hits the lake, watch the color, not the clipboard, I called out. Then I cracked the jar. The dye drifted like smoke under glass, then stretched thin, a ribbon drawn by the wind. Bon placement left, I said to the worker I recognized. Alvaro, I remembered from a muttered badge. You, with the rake, back up and go to the reeds. Reeds drink it. That's your natural help. What? Karen barked a laugh. Sir, please stop giving orders. You're not trained. I was trained, I said, not looking at her. Then I trained others. People didn't need to know my resume. They could see it. They watched the ribbon of color blow not where Karen's poster said it should go, but under the corner of Old Man Sam's deck. Sam himself stood there, hands shaking on the rail, eyes wet with the way nostalgia sometimes hurts. I matched old paper to new lies. I held up a faded map Sam had slipped into my palm an hour earlier, edges soft, ink pale but clear. 1989, I said, quiet enough to force people to lean in. That bend you shaved off on your update? It's real. Water remembers. But here's what she didn't know, I added, and Karen's sunglasses tilted just a fraction, a needle twitch of attention. This is a drill, a demonstration of what happens when your plan meets physics, and physics does not care about your bullet points. A murmur ran through the cluster. Logan took a step closer to Karen, like he wanted to be near the heat source in case he had to pick a side. He's got a point, he said under his breath. Then louder, I told you that bend was tricky. Karen didn't flinch. She didn't blink. This is a show, she said, voice slicing the air clean. Manufactured panic. He dumped dye in the water to scare people. You want to talk about manufactured? I asked, but my voice sounded tired to my own ears. The crowd's curiosity twisted into something uglier. Embarrassment for being fooled, hunger for someone to blame. I watched their faces tilt toward Karen. People love authority when it comes with swag polos and a tone that says, don't worry, we've got you. Logan's eyes slid away from mine. Maybe you should have asked first, he muttered. It was little, but it stung like salt. You ever stand in the middle of your own good intent and realize it looks like a mess from the outside? That was my moment. The dye curled under Sam's planks and vanished. The handbell felt stupid in my fist. By noon, the lawn emptied. The branded polos left with their gear. The murmur moved up the street, talking about that guy before the muffins got stale. I stayed by the water with my rolled-up map going soggy in my hand. I went inside and finally opened the box marked Her Things. On top was a card I'd forgotten existed. A folded note with her handwriting, round and steady. If you find yourself saving everyone again, remember, save yourself first. I sat heavily, the floorboards giving a little groan under my weight. For a few quiet minutes, the house was a chapel. Dust danced in a column of light, lazy and holy. My throat burned. I could hear her laugh somewhere in the kitchen. No, not really, but close enough my heart believed it. You know that feeling when you're so tired the idea of standing back up seems like climbing a hill in wet boots? That was me. I could quit, sell, move. I could let this town think whatever it wanted. No one would judge me for wanting a life without battles. Then I saw the lake through the window, flat as a mirror, honest as a scar, and something in me straightened. If I was going to stay, I couldn't keep playing by their script. I couldn't keep letting Karen decide if I was a problem or a person. Here's what I did next. I went back out with a hammer and the broken bones of my dock. I lashed together a small floating platform from the salvage, sturdy enough for one man, ugly enough no one would mistake it for a victory. I set glass jars along the edge, not filled with dye now, just empty clean, catching light like little lanterns. I painted a scrap of wood and nailed it to the post. Lesson 2, 7:02 a.m. It wasn't a complaint, it was a dare. If people love a show, I'd give them one that told the truth. Logan walked up slow, like you approach a dog you used to own. You're really doubling down? He asked. I'm building a stage, I said, not looking up. For the right script. What's that mean? It means tomorrow I teach kids how to throw a life ring, and I don't need permission to keep someone from drowning. What if Karen shuts it down? Then she can explain to a bunch of 10-year-olds why practice is dangerous. He folded his arms, then unfolded them. You know they'll come for you harder. I nodded. Yeah. Why? Because I stopped asking. He stared at the sign, at the jars, at me. You're a stubborn old man. Correct. He hesitated. For what it's worth, he said softly. I helped them redraw that map. Said I'd get my association dues lowered if I did some drafting on the side. I didn't think... I looked at him. He flinched like I'd hit him, though I hadn't moved. You thought you were helping yourself, I said. The words came out flat. He took it like a punch anyway. What would you do? I asked the heir, or you, or maybe my wife, if the person offering you an easy life wanted you quiet as the price. Tell me in the comments, because I needed someone to answer besides the lake. Outside, the wind shifted. The jars on my platform chimed, glass speaking to glass with a thin, brave sound. Tomorrow, 7:02. I'd see who showed up and who showed their hand. 7:02 came with a thin fog skimming the lake like breath on glass. My floating platform bumped the pilings, jars catching pale light and giving it back in broken pieces. A few kids showed, 2 brothers in mismatched life vests, a girl with a braid down her back, eyes bright. Their parents hovered a step behind, coffee cups, caution in their shoulders. "Morning," I said. "You toss a ring wrong, it turns into dead weight. You toss it right, it's a handshake." I showed them how to coil line, how to aim past the person so the loop lands at their shoulder. The braid girl nailed it on her 3rd try. "You'll make a better lake neighbor than most adults," I told her. She beamed. That's when the Homeowner Association crew arrived. Karen's mirrored lenses were gone. Today her eyes were visible, flat blue, watchful. 2 men in polos flanked her, and the worker from before, Alvaro, hung back, face tight. "Mike," Karen called, as if we were tennis partners. "We cannot allow unsanctioned training on shared access." "Training keeps people from panicking," I said. "You're welcome." "Pack it up," she said, a smile like a lid snapping shut. "Now! Have you ever had someone try to close your life like a container?" I felt that click. I breathed instead. "Kids," I said, gentle, "go stand by your folks." Alvaro stepped forward. "Ma'am, maybe let him—" "Alvaro," Karen cut without turning. "There's a process." He checked his watch and shut his mouth. Then Logan's voice came from behind Karen, thin and guilty. "He's trying to make you look bad," he said. The words tasted wrong in the air. He looked at me, then down. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it's soft, like a door closing gently on your fingers. I kept my face still. "You sleeping okay, Logan?" "Don't," he said. "Here's what happened next." A lazy ripple pushed under my platform, and one jar rolled, clinked, and tipped. Glass flashed and the sound carried. Bright, delicate, unmistakable. The kids jumped. Karen flinched. It was nothing, and it was everything. "This is a hazard," Karen announced to the small cluster of neighbors who'd paused to watch. "We'll be removing all unauthorized structures, for safety." "For whose?" I asked. "Community safety," she said, and somehow made community sound like a weapon. I could have argued, could have cited common sense, could have thrown my title, retired water rescue, like a badge. I didn't. I lowered my voice until people had to lean in. "You know what panic looks like? It looks like 10 adults who don't know how to throw a rope." She blinked, a hairline crack in porcelain. "Sir," the other polo said, "end it." I ended it. I told the kids, "Good job. Come back tomorrow, same time." Then I stepped off the platform and into the waist-deep water, walked it to the reeds, and tied it off out of the way. Voluntary compliance. It looked like I'd lost. It felt like I'd given them an inch to see if they'd run a mile. By afternoon, the lake was back to looking innocent. I'm old enough to know innocence is a costume water wears when it wants to be underestimated. I spent the day quiet, coiling rope, checking knots, listening. There was a time I would have kicked doors. Now, I wait for people to trip over their own. Patience is a tool, too. Near dusk, someone shuffled up my path. The porch wood creaked with a specific weight, bones light, courage heavy. Sam. He held something under a towel like a warm pie. "I thought you could use this," he said. Under the towel was a waterproof tube and, inside, a rolled map. "Original shoreline," he whispered, "plus the committee's edits. I heard them talk once. They cut corners. Literally." His smile was apologetic and crooked. "You sure about this?" I asked. He looked past me toward the water, like there was an old friend out there he couldn't quite see. "They told me if I kept quiet, I'd get my chairlift approved faster," he said. "I kept quiet for 2 years. My wife says I sleep like a guilty dog." He swallowed. "Maybe. I sleep better if I don't." "Thank you," I said. It didn't feel like enough. Here's what she didn't know. Karen. She didn't know I wasn't going to fight her on her turf anymore. No more posters against posters. Tomorrow, I'd use the only currency she couldn't counterfeit: competence. At first light, the wind came up from the south, a low, steady push that puts a memory into the lake. I hung a small orange float at the reed line and ran a slender cord to my platform. Nothing to snag, nothing to hurt. Then, I set my coffee on a post and waited. They came because they couldn't not. The Homeowner Association crew brought their booms and reels, their neat bins labeled with new vinyl letters. Karen's voice carried before she did. "We'll be conducting a shoreline preparedness check," she called. "Please keep clear." "By all means," I said. "Show us how it's done." I watched them set the floating barriers according to their update. Straight lines where the shore bowed. Sharp angles where a curve would have carried the current. It looked tidy. It looked wrong. The wind pushed the lake like a hand on a shoulder. The imaginary spill, today I used only duckweed stirred up from the reed bed, slid where old maps said it would, and new maps forgot. "Left flank," I called to Alvaro, not shouting, just enough. "You're about to funnel it under Sam's deck." "Stay back!" Karen snapped. "Then watch," I said. The green smear drafted exactly where physics signed its name. The crowd could see it. Logan could see it. Karen saw it and did what she always does, made it about me. "This is orchestrated," she said. "He's planting something." "Lake plants," I said dryly. "They've been in on it since '89. People chuckled despite themselves. Authority hates laughter. Karen's jaw set. "We're done here," she said, and spun to go. "Wait," Logan said, voice rough. He was pale. His eyes met mine for the first time all morning. "He's right. I helped redraw it, for a discount." I told myself it didn't matter. You ever watch a man take his own weight off your chest? That's what it felt like. Not a rescue, those you do with your hands. This you do by shutting up and letting someone be honest. Karen thawed her smile and pointed it at him. "Logan, don't be dramatic. I'm done," he said, louder now. "I'm done being useful for the wrong reasons." The air tightened, like a room right before a bad decision. People looked at Karen, then away. Her power wasn't gone, but it had a wobble now, like a chair with a short leg. Here's where I broke it. Not with proof, with a need they couldn't outsource. I raised my voice just enough. "Karen, your crew doesn't know how to work with this shoreline. I do. You need training, not posters. I'll run a real drill with your guys, today. You can call it your idea, on one condition." She waited. Pride is a slow injury. It takes a minute to hurt. "You rebuild my dock," I said. "Not as a personal amenity, as a training platform, with a plaque for my wife. And you keep the original shoreline map in your manual as historical correction. No more pretending the water bends for a committee." Her mouth compressed. She scanned the faces, calculating, always calculating. You could see her mind moving, flicking abacus beads labeled risk, optics, control. There's a look people get when they realize their authority just sprained an ankle. They either double down or they adapt. She chose survival because bullies love control more than they love consistency. "Alvaro," she said without looking at him, "call the truck. We'll need lumber." Then, to me, softer. "Can you run the drill now? Not sorry, not admitting fault, but asking." The word please wasn't there, but it was in her eyes, small and sour. "What would you do if the person who broke your thing asked you to fix theirs?" I heard my wife in my head again. "Save yourself first." I wasn't here to nurse her pride. I was here to make sure the next time something hissed under a floating deck, dragging that steel jaw, someone besides me knew what to do. "Yeah," I said. "We start with humility. You take orders from the lake." The drill ran hard and clean. I put Alvaro on point with 2 short commands at a time, the way you do when someone's nervous but capable. I put Logan on the reed line. He knew that bend in his sleep, time to know it with his hands. I made Karen carry booms and keep her mouth shut, and to her credit, she did. The die stayed in the jar. The lake taught the lesson anyway. Midway through, a gust shoved the barriers off angle. Karen reached to bark, then stopped, waiting for the cue. I gave it to Alvaro instead. He corrected like he'd been doing it for years. People watched competence bloom on his face. That's a look I never get tired of. We finished with sweat on our shirts and a quiet on the shore that felt earned. Not that party quiet from lawn signs and cookies. The kind where people count their breaths and know what they're counting for. Karen stepped in close, voice small enough to be mistaken for human. "We'll arrange the platform today, and the plaque." She swallowed. "You'll advise the team this month?" "On the water," I said. "Not in your office." "Of course." Then came the price. It always does. You don't get to pull a community through a narrow space without leaving skin on the rocks. My price was simple. The dock would never be just mine again. They rebuilt it all right, straight, stout, practical, and bolted a steel plate at the end, with my wife's name and the words training platform in stamped letters. Every time I sit with my coffee, I share the view with people who need to learn. Some days I want it back to just me and dragonflies. Most days, I'm grateful the platform keeps its promise to her. Mornings on a dock that matter. Later that week, I caught Logan sitting at the end, feet bare, a coil of rope in his hands he didn't know he'd coiled correctly until he looked down and grinned. "We good?" he asked without looking up. "We're honest," I said. "That's better." Sam came by, touched the plaque like it was a prayer, and cried without apologizing. Alvaro started showing up early, walking the line like it was his to guard. People began to wave at me, not because I was a problem, but because I was the guy who'd show up when the lake got teeth. As for Karen, she kept her title, she kept her blazer, but every time she walked past the platform, she glanced at that plaque like it owed her money. That's the thing about moral debts. They compound quietly. One evening, the wind turned nasty in minutes, a squall sliding in like a pulled curtain. A kid's foam raft blew out. The boy toppled. Before the scream could even thread itself, the braid girl, now with a fresher throw than most, sent the ring past his shoulder. His dad and I hauled him in together. The look the kid gave me, shock melting to relief, was worth more than any fine, reversed, or committee apology stamped on letterhead. We tied down gear in the last light. Karen stood on the grass, hair whipped, face unreadable. She stepped closer, spoke low. "I didn't expect to need you," she said, "and I don't like that I do." "I didn't move here to be needed," I said. "I moved here to be left alone." "Funny," she said, almost smiling. "That makes two of us." "Then stop knocking down docks," I said. She nodded once, a concession the size of a dime, and walked away. I wish I could tell you everything turned simple after that. It didn't. It never does. People are people. Pride flares, mistakes get made, weather changes its mind. But the platform held. The drills ran. The map in the manual stayed. Original line in black. Update crossed through with neat red. A little note in the margin that said, historical correction in neutral font that made me laugh. What would you do if your enemy asked for help and paid you back with a scar you chose? I chose a scar I could live with. I chose a morning where my coffee tastes like quiet and metal, like the plaque at my feet, and the jars catch the light and throw it back toward shore, fractured and honest. If you've ever had to turn a loss into a lever, tell me how you did it. I mean it. Sometimes, when the wind is right, I swear I hear my wife's voice in the clink of those jars. Not words, just approval, light as a hand on my shoulder. The lake keeps its secrets. So do people. But every now and then, it gives you back exactly what you put into it, multiplied by the courage it took to put it there. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a fight you didn't start, harden your throat. Options thin. Remember this. You don't have to win on their field. Build your own platform. Make them step onto it. Then let the water do the talking. If that hits home, let me know. And if you're ever near a shoreline at 7:02, bring a rope. We'll practice.